Hello, Emma Slade. It is so lovely to see you. Just full of joy when I saw you before we went on to record. How are you?
Yeah, I'm very, very good. I have my cat Socks on my lap. I don't know if you can see him, but
I can't see him,
you
no,
can't.
but we know he's there. Occasionally his tail appears.
Yeah.
So as we discussed before you came on, you're looking very sparkly at the moment because you're just back from retreat.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
So we have you in superb form, which is wonderful. So I know at the moment you're thriving, because sparkly is one of those adjectives that is synonymous with thriving.
Yeah.
And so the purpose of this little mini series is just to touch base with some of the wonderful 50 thrivers like you, and your story and your voice is in the book 9 Secrets to Thriving. Can't wait to hear it. And just to check in and say, are you thriving? And if so, do you have maybe 2 or 3 insights for the viewers on how we all might thrive during these difficult times?
Yeah, I definitely feel I'm thriving because I feel I've found the right path for me. And I've just, as you say, come out of a period of retreat, which is quite tough when you drop a lot of daily distraction and don't leave your house. But then again, I guess we've all been doing that a bit. Haven't we?
We have.
Yes, indeed. So retreat is like a kind of lockdown to the power of 10, you know. But I chose to do it. It wasn't imposed on me. And I guess that's the basic difference, isn't it? When we struggle more when things are imposed upon us, we haven't chosen them. Our basic autonomy is less happy at that point. But from this point now, I guess we can reflect back on what's been a very unusual and emotionally challenging time. And I think that for me, it's quite helpful to either draw that out or kind of put it on a curve or some kind of diagram. It helps me cope, because I noticed in myself lots of different emotional states coming up. I observed them in myself and I observed them in others. And I think largely there were 3 distinct phases, I would say. So first of all, there was the initial shock or anger or denial about something which seemed to come from nowhere and nobody had chosen. And then there was a gradual acceptance, coming to terms with what was going on. And then I think to go beyond acceptance to thrive or see some positive change or some positive learnings that were coming out of it, then I think that was stage 3. I don't know if we all managed all 3, and if you were one of the poor people who was personally affected, or somebody close to you was personally affected, I suspect that one would be brought back into stage 1 again, the fear, the anger, the denial, or whatever that stage may reoccur. I wasn't in that category, so I was able to find ways to accept however uncomfortable the situation was, and then eventually to find some positives or some learnings that came out of it. And for me, those learnings were mainly about appreciating the peace and the quiet, which I really did, and living that simpler life. And then also realizing, particularly for me, I felt, I really valued my friends and realized how much I missed not being able to be with them. So it kind of made me see my friendship group as so precious. And so when I first saw them again, it was really, I always knew friendship was important, but not to the extent that I think I valued it after coming out of lockdown. So yeah, I think there were those distinct phases, and I can kind of now, I could populate them on a sort of graph and reflect on them. And I think that's personally helpful for me to do, because it makes me feel constructive about the whole experience.
No, I completely agree. I think that's really useful. And certainly for those who, speaking for me personally, it hasn't always been a sort of linear process. I have fallen back a little bit and then moved forward. And I know for those close to me, particularly those who've been in isolation during lockdown, particularly difficult for them, or those who have been ill. But I think it's It's really helpful to track it on some kind of trajectory or line, because it feels then at least as if you're making progress, and it's more helpful to focus in on the insights which have been helpful, of which there have been many. And has there been anything else that you've found really helpful through this time, so that you're not just surviving or existing but thriving?
I think, I mean, just to continue with that point, I think with the idea of tracking it more is also somehow to honor all the emotions that we had. Because I had moments of fear of looking at those daily numbers. I also had this really heart-rending moment when we would stand outside our door and banged on our things and seeing my neighbors. I had some moments of, like, a few tears came to my eyes, you know. So I think it's also, and like now that's not the case. I don't leave my door and have tears about my neighbors, right? So I think it's something also about really honoring the emotions that were there, and not just rushing past them. Also, I would say, in terms of what helped me to thrive in the situation. I don't know. I'd spent a lot of time in the garden, tending plants. I noticed a lot of insects. I think from a Buddhist point of view, we always like to have the perspective of our human life as part of this very large living organism with many creatures and many insects and birds and worms. And we often talk about it theoretically. You know, we talk about all sentient beings having a mind that can think of all sentient beings. But definitely my awareness and appreciation and just noticing of all the little creatures in my garden. I know it sounds strange, but that was something that really helped me to keep perspective and not to shrink into fear of my own situation somehow.
So that doesn't sound at all strange, at least to me, because either we're both strange and everyone else is watching this and going, it's the Emma parade and they're just weird, or people can relate to this. So for me, I think it had a lot to do with the fact that the size of my world shrunk quite drastically. And so the level of my awareness sort of disproportionately expanded because my world has shrunk. So being much more aware of nature and birds and everything else, but also the world had shut down. So nature had a much greater role to play, I think, and that was just beautiful. And it would be one wish for me that would continue. Unfortunately, that's probably not going to be granted to the extent I would like it to be. That might sound weird to you, me having said that, but it was the shrinking of my world made me much more aware of everything that was in it than I would normally when I would be rushing from A to B.
Yeah, I think that's a good way of looking at it. I mean, we were lucky, right? We had nature with us. I think if you were in a high-rise block with no nature and you're in that much more physically confined sense of the world having shrunk, I think that must have been much more difficult to gain that perspective. I was lucky because I could open a back door and walk into a small garden. So we were lucky with that. You know, nature could save us, isn't it? But if you weren't able to do that, I would imagine it would have been much, much harder in that sense of having your world having shrunk into somewhere that would feel quite trapping. Must have been much greater.
And in addition, you know, having living with lots of people in a confined space. So as much as you love your family, having them around 24/7 in a confined space, especially if you didn't have a back garden, would put massive strain on family relationships. So, you know, I know that a lot of the components which contribute to your story of thriving, my story of thriving, would be absent for so many people. And I think just honouring that and recognising that is really important too.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I joke about it, but on some level, my standards for living, I don't mind if they drop, right? I mean, I think we can't expect things, if we hold on to some way of being that's now impossible to replicate, you're either going to suffer a lot or you're going to go, okay, nobody gets out of bed till 11 now. All right, I'll go with that. I mean, I think there has to be some flexibility there to allow I mean, I call it my standards dropping. Yeah, let the standards drop. Because if you hold on desperately to some way of doing something, which now creates a lot of strain in the family, or, I mean, I think that a lot of people found with the homeschooling, it's just kind of like, we're just doing what we can here.
Yeah.
And if we can see that as being flexible and being wise, and not struggling to keep trying to recreate something which is no longer impossible to recreate, I think things go easier, isn't it?
3 cheers for pragmatism, that's what I say, especially at times like this. Emma, it has been just a joy to see you, especially in such sparkly form. I mean, I've never known you otherwise.
To keep sparkling.